That's fantastic. Now, last thing I kind of want to touch on, I know it's very early for you guys, but when I think of BCI, I feel like in some ways it has some similarities to biotech in the sense that with biotech, at some point, M&A is really important because it costs a lot of money to get through certain clinical trials and phases. And so the M&A piece for biotech is super important. Otherwise, we wouldn't have those innovations. I feel like it's the same way with BCI because there's so much work that has to be done. It's really expensive. How do you look at strategics, let's say like a J&J or Medtronic or Stryker or, any of those kind of strategics, like their role in playing this? Do you feel like those are the companies that are going to play a role in the M&A activity? Is it going to be tech?
I think that the medical device companies are starting to wake up to BCI. You hear Medtronic's been describing their deep brain stimulator systems as, the most commercialized BCIs in the world. They've started using the word BCI. It's clear that Abbott are here in town in Austin. I mean, they know about BCI. They're actually almost our neighbors. They know about BCI. Boston Scientific, surely BCIs hit their radar as well. I think in that sense, maybe Elon has changed the landscape and the discussion a little bit. Traditionally, medical device acquirers, they sit back and they wait and they say, we're going to pick a winner. We're going to wait for them to have traction, but like they had the luxury of waiting. But Elon changes that a little bit because Neuralink won't ever be acquired and probably won't partner with them. And so that essentially makes kind of an existential threat anywhere where BCI could have benefit, which is almost everywhere. And if you want to be in the game, you're going to have to get capabilities. It's hard for a big company, whether it's pharma or med device, to build a BCI program. And if they want to be competitive with high data rate programs, to be blunt, there's only one other company that's open for business, and that's us. And so I feel actually very confident about Paradromics from an acquisition perspective, because I don't think that that's the right play. But I mean, from a partnership perspective, there's a lot that we could do with some of the device companies I just mentioned, even with a lot of the pharma companies that we've now besmirching.
Yeah. What do you think? Because I feel like with pharma, more and more, they have this interest to get into the game of having hardware for like drug delivery and therapies and stuff. What role do you think like pharma could potentially play? And maybe that's the area where J&J kind of split things off, so it's a little bit different there. But yeah, what's your thoughts on
devices are interesting, right? Because when a drug patent expires, it's like anyone can print it basically. But devices, there's so much know-how, there's so much inertia. It's not easy to knock off a complicated medical device. Yeah, I think that the devices have a little bit more staying power, especially a PMA device like a high data rate BCI. And so I think that there's a protectability. There's a lot to say about the BCI business model. And I think that it can be very complementary to pharma because there are certain drugs that, let's say, you could maybe even rehabilitate in a world where you had more data. There really might be drug device combos that would have synergistic effect and where the kinds of drugs that would be most useful for treating the conditions could kind of change on a dime if you had the ability to read out data in real time and change dosage.
Hearing what you're saying now, one thing I wonder is BCI, do you feel like it's a niche space, like kind of like orphan drugs because of the applications and stuff? What market-wise and everything?
Not at all. There's a more
rough market estimation.
There was a Morgan Stanley report that came out recently that said the intermediate market for BCIs is $400 billion.
It's a lot bigger than
that's just those are just the places where we have line of sight on clear clinical indications. That's not even accounting for, the revolutionary change in mental health that I'm describing, or the idea that one day BCIs could be, wellness devices or other kinds of consumer devices. That's just the things that we see. The way in which BCI will be a little bit like therapeutics for orphan conditions is that the first markets will be relatively modest number of patients and very focused, because every BCI company wants to make sure that its first trial and its first market launch are very focused and very successful. adoption is good, and outcomes are good. But it'll be, more like a therapeutics kind of land and expand strategy. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that because so many of the different BCI platforms are different and have different capabilities.
They're very different. I did notice that, like even their, not just their applications, but the way they interface with the brain, like some are deep in the brain, some are on the surface. And I just I'm not sure like exactly how to gauge the efficacy of those kind of things.
I think the land will look very similar. You'll see a lot of companies that are working in, for instance, paralysis in somewhat overlapping, but not exactly the same indications. But the expand will be radically different because, like you said, there's some devices that are really good at getting into deep areas of the brain. There's some devices that are easily placed in the brain and removed. And then there's some devices that have really high data rate and can support advanced applications that no other device can. And that's the place where we want to play because we see the most exciting developments in BCI being on the data side.